You could soon be able to get liquor delivered straight to you, no matter where you live in the valley. Clark County commissioners are looking at how to legalize alcohol delivery countywide. Fox News' Mike Allen explains what this might actually look like for customers.
Well, a few of the businesses behind me in this shopping center are allowed to sell alcohol and deliver it. And it does depend what part of the valley you're in right now. This would kind of put a blanket over the rest of the county. Although, as I found out, not a lot of places take advantage of this law. Of the about 4 dozen liquor stores that I called today, only about 4 or 5 say they actively deliver.
The Clark County Board of Commissioners taking up a familiar issue, the legalization of liquor delivery. The chairman of Clark County's Liquor and Gaming Board, Commissioner William McCurdy, requested the issue be brought up to the board this week.
We have a responsibility to be, very aware of the negative implications that could come from a policy of such. We don't want our kids getting a hold of liquor.
Current state law allows for a store or third-party services like Grubhub to deliver alcohol to people over 21 years old. The person delivering it also has to be over 21. And they'll be looking for signs of intoxication, which disqualifies anyone from receiving that liquor. The state law was passed after the county declined to legalize liquor delivery a few years ago, and not all commissioners are on board with complying with this relatively new state law.
There was a reason why we didn't pass it. There was tons of comments that everybody had.
McCurdy thinks there's a way for the county to adapt to the statewide law and add some more guardrails to it.
I think that we'll be able to come out with something very, number one, safe for the public, but number two, thought out, and making sure that we protect our youth and keeping it out of the hands of folks who shouldn't have it.
Now, there are several other stipulations around the state law that are aimed at making it a little safer. For example, you can only make deliveries in the jurisdiction where the business exists. And also, the store needs to sell beer, wine, and hard alcohol in order to be eligible for it. I got a full list of those stipulations on our website, posted on the online version of this story. Reporting live, Mike Allen, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
Commissioner McCurdy says he expects the board to hammer out the details of the proposal in the next month or two.